overall. And talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League, that leads us into the first topic that I want to talk about today, and it's been announced by Warner Brothers that they are not going to pursue continuing the Snyderverse. This is something we all presumed would happen. This is the thing. They have announced basically that they have no plans to continue the Snyderverse. They still want to carry on with their current trajectory of what they want to do with their individual films. They're not really interested in bringing Snyder back and trying to expand that world he built in a way, especially with Snyder in charge. So it's one of those guys. It's a tough one because this is the same company that told us we would never get a Snyder Cut. So it's difficult to believe what they say. Do I believe that this is going to be a thing? Do I genuinely believe that we'll never see the continuation of Zack Snyder's his take on the DC universe? The answer to that question is very complex because I think with the nature of the film we got on well, for me it would have been Now TV. For people in America it would have been HBO Max. But the nature of that film that we got, for me, there is something there. I feel like there's something there that if they wanted to do their own little separate thing on HBO Max, they probably could do. Do I think it will be the main continuation for this universe going forward? No. I don't think so. And I think the reason... See, I think the main reason for this is very complex, because I do think this is a series that has a lot of potential, especially now, especially after we saw Justice League. I think Justice League, for me, Zack Snyder's take on Justice League, if anything, one of the best parts of it for me was how it set up the future of this universe going forward. How it set up Flash and Cyborg and Aquaman and set this kind of unity up between these characters and how that could go on moving forward. But I think with the nature of this property, if you're a business, you're running a business, you're the head of Warner Brothers, you're looking at this as a business perspective. The DCEU films financially really have kind of underperformed. Now, I'm not saying they've done bad. I'm not saying they've done bad at all. I don't think they have done bad at all, the DCEU films. However, I will say some of them have definitely underperformed. Man of Steel, I think, was a good jumping off point for the series. You know, you could use the excuse that we were going off Superman Returns, and which wasn't really very loved by people. And then Man of Steel kind of come along, so it had that kind of burden on it. We hadn't had a good Superman film for 30 years at that point, so it was definitely tough to kind of kick this series off with a massive success. But I do see Man of Steel as a financial success. I will say that. I think with the expectation for it, I think with the way that character saw in pop culture at the time, I definitely think that they succeeded there. Now, the only problem is going forward is that I think this series of films should have been aiming higher box office wise than they did in the end. So we're looking at films like Suicide Squad, we're looking at films like Batman vs Superman, we're looking at films like Justice League. These films that had this Zack Snyder tone to them. Even Suicide Squad. If you watch Suicide Squad, it feels like it's in that Snyder kind of style. This very dark, dreary, gloomy kind of style. Those films really underperformed, in my opinion. Batman vs Superman didn't even crack $1 billion. How has that happened? How has Black Panther and Captain Marvel and all these... How has that been able to crack $1 billion and Batman vs Superman didn't? So I think that is where WB will be looking at this. Looking at the returns from the original cut of Justice League, looking at the returns of Batman versus Superman and probably asking themselves, you know what, let's probably stick in this different direction, because since they've changed their direction, I mean, it has to be said they've been a lot more successful than they were before. Like, it's just a fact. Like, it can't be denied. Some films haven't performed as well as they probably should do. Birds of Prey, I don't think performed anywhere near as well as they was expecting. You know, I don't think Shazam was like a huge success, even though people liked it. And I was one of those people. It wasn't a huge financial success, but the Wonder Woman films have been very successful. Aquaman was very successful. Obviously, we have the James Gunn Suicide Squad film coming, which looks fantastic. Joker was a huge success. We've got Robert Pattinson's Batman film coming in a few years. So we have these different films now that are kind of going on their own path. And I think they are going for a completely different tone to what Snyder's set up, and they're going away from like a different story than what he was going for. Especially with this Snyder cut now, and more we've seen more from that world. You can very clearly see that they was going for a different. They've gone for a different tone, a different way of approaching their films since Snyder was like kind of leading this. So I think from a business perspective, WB will be looking at this and thinking, you know, yes, we've had all these really good, you know, good reactions towards Zack Snyder's Justice League. But if you're looking at history, his DCEU films have flopped when it comes to the box office. They've not really performed as well as they probably want them to. And I think giving it to someone who is like a David F. Sandberg, or, you know, someone, or even a Patty Jenkins. Yes, Wonder Woman 84 was awful, but like a lot of people like Wonder Woman, and I did think she did good with that first film. Even though I can't stand Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, one of the best things about that film was the direction and the story and the pacing and the end. That was good. And I think Patty Jenkins could do a decent like Justice League kind of film there, and I think she could be a good person to kind of carry this universe going forward. Or a David F. Sandberg, you know, someone who is a little bit more not as kind of safe, someone who's a little bit more adventurous with their directing, and then someone's a bit more fresher and newer. Even James Wan, if they wanted to bring James Wan back and kind of have him guide this ship as far as like their creative like force, that could work. I just don't see the financial gain for WB continuing the Snyderverse, especially in cinemas. Maybe on streaming services. Like I said, I did mention this earlier. If they wanted to kind of continue the Snyderverse on HBO Max in a similar way that they did the Snyder Cut, maybe that could work. Maybe as like an Elseworld kind of separate from the main films that WB will be producing and will be releasing in cinemas. If they wanted to do that, like their own kind of thing, then possibly, maybe that could work. But I think for the main WB line of films, I think the Snyderverse is kind of done now. And continuing on from that, it's been rumoured and been clamouring for quite a while, actually. And that is a David Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. Now, this is very interesting. This is something I've wanted to talk about for years, guys, because I remember when they released that first trailer of Suicide Squad, it was that that song that was like, I started a joke, which started that one, that really creepy, unnerving trailer. And you saw the Joker at the end, and he's like about to like electrocute Harley Quinn, and it's this really like eerie, dark tone. And I remember that trailer and thinking, this film actually looks really good. Like, I'm not a huge David Ayer fan. Like, let me just say that from the off. I'm not a massive David Ayer fan. I don't think he's a very good director at all. But when it's similar to Snyder in a way that when he does hit, he hits. Like, he hit with Training Day for sure. But if you look since then, like, I remember that film he did with Arnold Schwarzenegger, that Sabotage, which was just not great. It has to be said, it wasn't great. But he did films like Fury, I think. He did Fury with Brad Pitt. which was a decent film. So he has it in his locker. And I think he had something there with Suicide Squad. So, similar to the way I think about Suicide Squad, a lot of other people have been kind of clamouring for a David Ayer kind of director's supercut to be released on HBO Max in a similar style to what Justice League was. Obviously, Suicide Squad was a film that was changed so much during production, as far as the original cut was kind of dark, had this very serious tone. They had the reaction from Batman versus Superman, and at the time, Suicide Squad was already kind of shot. So, and I don't think they did reshoots for Suicide Squad either. So it was already shot, it was already done. And then we had that second trailer, which for me was it was such a different tone from that original first trailer. You could see their reaction. Like, they was panicking after Batman versus Superman. 100%. Like, they was definitely panicking after the reaction of that film. That film, that one of the main criticisms was it was too dark. You know, it needed more humour. It took itself too seriously. So they took a film that was very serious in tone and tried to make this Guardians of the Galaxy weird kind of humorous comedic film out of a film that wasn't that. Like, it's very strange. David Ayer's Suicide Squad, it's a weird thing. I hate Suicide Squad, by the way. I hate it. For me, it's the worst DCEU film by a mile. It's so bad. It's worse than Batman vs Superman, worse than Whedon's Justice League. It's a complete mess. It's so you can tell when you're watching it. Like, it's such a tonally inconsistent film. You'll have scenes that are very serious, and then you'll have like all these weirdly edited scenes that just don't fit. Like, I still don't understand why Joker was in that. If I mean, it was always said that there was enough footage there to almost make a Joker and Harley Quinn film, because there was that much footage, and Joker was in it for what, 5 minutes in the final cut. There was no need for him to be there, and Jared Leto's performance was just shocking. I mean, it was the worst Joker ever. In my opinion, he was just terrible. He was really bad in that film. Whether that was through direction or whether that was through his interpretation of the character, it was terrible. The look of the character, the way he spoke, the way he acted, it was just terrible. And he didn't need to be in that film. So with all the behind the scenes problems that that David Ayer had with his cut of Justice League, they basically turned a very serious film into an over-the-top, weirdly edited film, and I'm sure it was edited. The final cut of the film was edited by the company that cut the trailer together. Whoa, that's better. Sorry, I just had a massive sneeze. Oh god, that was better. I think Suicide Squad's making me ill. Oh dear. Right, where was I? Yeah, okay, Suicide Squad. Yeah, it was just very tonally inconsistent, and I remember kind of going back to what I was talking about before I had my sneezing fit. The final edit of Suicide Squad, this is how much of a terrible production this was, and how the studio just completely fucked over David Ayer with this. The studio that cut that Queen Bohemian Rhapsody trailer for Suicide Squad, they basically, WB gave the film to that company who cut the trailer together, and they then did the final cut of Suicide Squad. So when you're watching Suicide Squad, and you almost feel like you're watching like a trailer, especially in that first act. That first act of Suicide Squad is, it's garbage, man. It's so bad. It's this weird, you get all these weird kind of neon graphics. Scenes just don't mesh well together. They cut with scenes that don't match at all, as far as the story and the tone. They're edited together so strangely, and it doesn't work at all. It just does not work. So I kind of feel sorry for David Ayer in that sense. David Ayer definitely got the short straw when it comes to Suicide Squad. And a lot of people, including myself, have always wondered, what would it be like if the studio didn't interfere with David Ayer? What would a David Ayer cut of Suicide Squad be? You know, what would this film be like? Would it be this kind of dark, sinister kind of film that I was expecting in a way? And I always thought that we'd get that. However, it doesn't look like we are going to get that film. WB have kind of chucked that to one side, said that's not going to happen. Even though I think David Ayer has been very supportive of that to happen, I don't think that will happen. I think Justice League was such an anomaly in that sense. We've never seen anything like that before. We've seen director's cuts of films before, but as far as like taking a film and finishing it and taking a film and expanding it to the amount that Justice League eventually became, I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again for a long time, for a very long time. Like, and I think the one film in the DCEU that could follow that similar trend could have been Suicide Squad, because it was just, you could tell it was such a different film from what I originally wanted, that something needed to be done. Like the music choices, the editing, it was just terrible, and it didn't fit what I wanted. You could clearly see that. So it doesn't look like we're going to get the Ayer cut. It seems like Zack Snyder's time in the DCEU probably is over as far as the Warner Brothers main line of films go. But I think there is still a little bit of hope. I'm not saying this is 100% definitely done. I won't say that. If I had to bet money, I wouldn't bet money on it. I don't think this is done 100%. I do think there's a possibility there that we will see Zack Snyder return to the DCEU again. I do think that'll happen. Whether it be through a HBO Max continuation of his story from Justice League, or whether it's through another source, I do think we'll see him back again. And I hope we do, because Justice League did set up a lot. They set up a lot in that film, and I do think there is a lot of places they can go with that film. As far as the Ayer cut goes of Suicide Squad, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I'd love that to happen. I really would, because I do think there's a good film in there somewhere, but I just don't think we're going to get it, guys. And it's just a shame, really, because I think things could have been different for Ayer when it comes to that film. But I guess we'll never find out, unless WB change their mind, which is very possible, because look what's happened with the Snyder Cut. So we'll never know what's going to happen with that, but fingers crossed. Let's see. Time will tell, I guess. It's one of those situations. Time will tell. We'll have to see how that goes.